August 19, 1944. At the Wehrmacht headquarters in East Prussia, General Oberst Alfred Jodl scrutinized the latest intelligence reports from the collapsing Western Front. His staff had meticulously calculated the logistics of the Allies' extended supply lines, stretching over 400 miles from the Normandy beaches to Patton's spearheading Third Army. The Americans had outpaced their logistical capabilities. Patton's advance would inevitably grind to a halt within days, perhaps even hours. No military force could maintain such rapid progress without a steady flow of fuel. From his vantage point at Hitler's Wolfschanze headquarters, Jodl understood the harsh realities that every German general knew all too well. An armored division consumed a staggering 150,000 gallons of fuel daily during offensive operations. The Americans were now 400 miles from their supply depots. The inescapable conclusion was clear. Patton's Third Army had overextended itself. The Wehrmacht forces were given a brief respite at the Seine, allowing them to regroup and potentially hold their ground until the onset of winter. However, unbeknownst to them, a massive logistical operation was already underway, with 5,958 trucks rumbling eastward in a continuous convoy, their headlights defiantly challenging military doctrine. This remarkable undertaking, dubbed the Red Ball Express, was transporting a staggering 12,500 tons of supplies every 24 hours. A feat of logistics that had never before been conceived possible by German military strategists. Within a mere 72 hours, Patton's supposedly immobilized tanks would shatter through the German positions at the Senator in the span of a week. They would liberate Paris. And within a month, these relentless forces would reach the German border, shattering every assumption about the capabilities of mechanized warfare. The German military's most esteemed strategists were about to undergo a profound lesson in American logistical prowess, one that would forever reshape their perception of contemporary warfare. This transformative education was delivered by a force of 23,000 truck drivers, 75% of whom were African American, who transformed a one-way highway system into the most efficient military supply chain in history. The German General Staff's confidence in the failure of American logistics stemmed from decades of military experience and recent observations. The Wehrmacht had pioneered the Blitzkrieg, revolutionized combined arms tactics, and intimately understood the tyranny of supply lines. Their own campaigns had repeatedly stalled, not due to Soviet resistance, but from the sheer inability to sustain their operational momentum. In Russia, the Wehrmacht's advance had foundered, not from initial Soviet opposition, but from the simple logistical constraints that plagued their forces. The German military's reliance on outdated transportation methods proved a significant hindrance in supplying their forces across vast expanses. While the panzer spearheads advanced rapidly, the German trucks faltered on the Russian roads, and the horse-drawn wagons, which still accounted for 80% of their military transport, struggled to match the speed. Furthermore, the differences in railway gauges meant that supplies piled up hundreds of miles from the front lines. As General de Panzertrooper Heinrich von Luttwitz, who would later command the 47th Panzer Corps in September 1944, observed, the Americans faced a similar logistical challenge. Their mechanical advantage became a disadvantage, as machines required fuel, ammunition, and spare parts. Despite their initial 400-mile advance in 30 days, history had taught that paralysis would soon follow. German intelligence meticulously tracked the American consumption rates, revealing that a single Sherman tank burned 0.5 gallons per mile. The fuel efficiency of military vehicles on the roads was far worse when traversing rugged terrain. An infantry division necessitated a staggering 700 tons of supplies daily, while an armored division demanded even more at 1,000 tons. General Patton commanded an impressive 12 divisions, advancing on a 60-mile front. The logistical calculations were daunting. 12,000 tons of supplies required transportation over 400 miles from the beaches, across damaged roads through a transportation network systematically devastated by the retreating Germans. General Major Siegfried Westphal, who would later become Chief of Staff to Field Marshal von Rundstedt in September, meticulously analyzed the situation on August 20. Even with unlimited trucks, perfect roads, and no mechanical failures, he concluded that sustaining Patton's advance would be virtually impossible. The Motor Transport Service officer, Lieutenant Colonel Laurent Ayres, convened a meeting on August 25, 1944, in a requisitioned French chateau near Lay, facing a room of skeptical colleagues. The data they presented was stark. Patton's Third Army was consuming supplies at an unprecedented rate, advancing at speeds that overwhelmed all logistical planning. Traditional supply methods, including railway transport, scheduled convoys, and depot distribution, had crumbled under the strain. "Gentlemen," Ayres declared, "we will establish a one-way highway from Cherbourg and the beaches to the front lines. Each vehicle will operate for 20 hours out of 24. Physical laws," he acknowledged, "could not be violated, not even by American industry." Yet the math was unforgiving. Patton's forces were depleting resources faster than any army in history. The Red Ball Express was a logistical marvel, a high-speed transportation network that defied conventional military thinking. Clocking a daily minimum of 12,500 tons, this express freight system operated on the same principle as the railways: Red Ball, shipments, absolute priority, no delays, no exceptions. Abandoning blackout protocols, the convoys ran 24/7, with loaded trucks moving forward and empties returning on parallel one-way highways. Maintaining a blistering 35 miles per hour average, the system allowed for 5-minute intervals between vehicles, with mobile maintenance units stationed every 50 meters and military police checkpoints ensuring no laggards fell behind. This technical feat, a far cry from standard German doctrine, kept the vital supplies flowing without interruption, fueling the Allied advance. The advanced section of the ADSE, commanded by Colonel Charles O. Thrasher, meticulously reviewed the projected logistics. A minimum of 140 truck companies and 5,958 vehicles operating at 90% availability were deemed essential. This requirement seemed unfeasible by any standard textbook. Yet within 36 hours, the seemingly impossible became a reality. On August 26, 1944, the 3,916 Quartermaster Truck Company, their GMCCCKW 2.5-ton deuce and a half trucks laden with 105 mm artillery shells, embarked on a 300-mile journey to deliver vital ordnance to Patton's guns at Melun. The diverse demographic composition of the Red Ball Express would have challenged the racial preconceptions of German theorists. Ultimately, 23,000 drivers from various backgrounds would contribute to this remarkable logistical feat. The African American soldiers, comprising around 75% of the workforce, operated the route despite the prevailing segregation in much of America. These men, barred from white-only establishments, were responsible for keeping the renowned white general's army in motion. Within hours, the drivers established their own unique culture, adorning their trucks with slogans like "Patton's Bloodbank," "Hitler, Here We Come," and "Detroit to Berlin Express." They also developed their own informal traffic protocols, immediately clearing the way for slower vehicles and pushing any truck unable to maintain a minimum speed of 20 miles per hour into the ditches. By August 28, German reconnaissance units began reporting an unprecedented sight, with units from the 116th Armored Division radioing in from positions overlooking the main supply route. The American supply chain operated with remarkable efficiency, defying German military conventions. On August 30, General Lieutenant Edgar Feuinger of the 21st Panzer Division observed the Red Ball Express from concealed positions. His report to Army Group B headquarters expressed growing alarm at the enemy's unprecedented logistical capabilities. Vehicles traversed the route in an uninterrupted 814 column, their headlights visible for 20 kilometers. Discipline was unwavering, with no blackout observed. Feuinger estimated a throughput of 1,000 vehicles per hour, a staggering rate that disregarded standard military precautions. Continuous columns and unshielded headlights at night presented easy targets for air attacks and artillery, yet the Americans seemed unconcerned. The lack of spacing between vehicles meant a single disabled truck could halt an entire convoy, but the supply system operated with remarkable resilience, day and night. The American logistics machine operated on principles vastly different from German military doctrine. While the Germans emphasized concealment and strict procedures, the Americans relied on sheer volume and continuous improvisation. The Red Ball Express, a remarkable feat of wartime transportation, defied German calculations of logistical feasibility. In the first week alone, from August 25 to 31 Stone, 1944, the Express delivered an astounding 89,939 tons of supplies, with a daily average of 12,848 tons. Covering a round-trip distance of 686 miles, the operation involved 5,958 trucks making 1.5 rotations without pause, a testament to the American approach of mass production applied to warfare. The Red Bull Express, a logistical marvel, defied German expectations. American documents captured by their specialists revealed staggering figures: a daily fuel consumption of 300,000 gallons just to sustain the operation. Yet these numbers, dismissed as propaganda, proved all too real, accelerating rapidly. By September 5, the Express had established an unrelenting rhythm, with convoys departing every 5 minutes from the western terminus. Each convoy averaged 67 vehicles, carrying standard loads of 5 tons, frequently overloaded to 7 tons. The 350-mile one-way journey took an average of 14 hours, with a 2-hour turnaround at each end. At any given moment, 5,000 vehicles remained in constant motion, a testament to American logistical prowess that left German officers, still relying on horse-drawn wagons for 80% of their transport, in awe. The Red Ball Express was a marvel of wartime logistics, with its crews constantly devising innovative solutions to keep the supply chain moving. When trucks inevitably broke down at a rate of around 1,800 per day, mobile maintenance units sprang into action, employing a triage system that could either repair the vehicle within 15 minutes or push it aside. Mechanics cannibalized parts from irreparable trucks, and even managed to swap out entire engines in just 45 minutes using mobile cranes. As the designated route became congested, the resourceful drivers found alternative paths, commandeering French buses to transport personnel and free up trucks for cargo. They even borrowed German vehicles, painting them olive drab and pressing them into service. When bridges were destroyed, the crews built bypasses using the available rubble. Amid the chaos, the Americans defied German military doctrine by disregarding meticulous planning and procedures. The Red Ball Express, a logistical marvel, consumed an astounding 300,000 gallons of gasoline daily, surpassing the fuel allotted to many German armies. Remarkably, the Americans had engineered a parallel feat, Operation Pluto, laying underwater pipelines across the English Channel to ensure a steady fuel supply. By September 1944, this ingenious system was delivering fuel through the submerged conduits, leaving the bewildered German intelligence unaware of its existence. The Red Ball Express, a logistical marvel, ensured a steady flow of fuel along the supply route. Forward fuel depots were strategically placed every 25 miles, with tanker convoys running parallel to guarantee refueling within 10 minutes. Aerial reconnaissance by General Major Walter Wilmot revealed the staggering scale of American fuel reserves, dwarfing the Axis strategic stockpiles. This unprecedented logistical capability fueled the Allies' relentless advance, far exceeding the German military's doctrinal estimates of a 20 to 30-mile daily advance for an armored division under optimal conditions. Patton's divisions, empowered by the Red Ball Express, shattered these limitations, multiplying their speed exponentially. The Red Ball Express fleet maintained a remarkable pace, averaging 40 to 60 miles per day for weeks on end. On September 1, 1944, the 4th Armored Division achieved a staggering 35-mile advance by noon, pausing briefly for resupply at 14:04. The waiting Red Ball trucks swiftly provided the necessary fuel and ammunition, allowing the division to push forward another 32 miles by 14:11 in the afternoon. This remarkable 67-mile single-day advance shattered German defensive planning, which had assumed a maximum daily progress of just 30 miles. General Oberst Heinz Guderian, reviewing the reports from East Prussia, initially refused to believe the accounts, insisting that no armored force could sustain a 60-mile daily pace for an entire week, as mechanical failures alone would prevent such a feat. He dismissed the reports as propaganda or misidentification. However, intercepted American radio traffic soon confirmed the astonishing advances. This development proved deeply unsettling for German commanders, as the American forces were openly broadcasting their positions, foregoing the use of coded communications, firmly convinced of their capacity to outpace the German response. By September 5, 1944, German intelligence had compiled comprehensive reports on the Red Ball Express, a development with catastrophic implications for Wehrmacht planning. Every assumption about American military capability required thorough revision, as the report contained observations that defied German military doctrine. The Americans displayed a profligate approach to their vehicles, readily abandoning damaged trucks instead of repairing them. Drivers operated under the influence of stimulants for extended periods, disregarding fundamental principles of personnel management. The lack of camouflage discipline rendered the entire system vulnerable to air attacks that never materialized. The staggering mechanical failure rates of 30% per day were simply overwhelmed by the sheer scale of fuel consumption, a level that would have crippled the German forces. The renowned Field Marshal Walter Model's distressed reaction at 3:47 p.m. underscored the escalating desperation. If the intelligence is precise, we confront not a superior military force, but a superior civilization. They make no attempt to conceal themselves, for they 4:03 p.m. harbor no fear of us. They squander resources because their supply is limitless. 4:11 p.m. We cannot overcome this with conventional military tactics. The Red Ball Express drivers endured a grueling physical toll that German observers failed to comprehend. Drivers operated continuously for 72 hours, hallucinating from fatigue and stimulants. 4:23 p.m. accidents claimed the lives of 300 drivers during the Red Ball's operational duration. Trucks collided in the fog, overturned on damaged roads, and burst into flames when overheated engines ignited. Yet their morale remained remarkably high. These men, predominantly African American, were denied equal rights. The Red Ball Express's relentless operations shattered Hitler's racial theories, as evidenced by the admissions of captured German officers. Oust Hans von Luck, a prisoner since September 1944, acknowledged the Allies' triumph, stating, "We knew we'd lost when we understood your supply system. You violate every rule, waste fuel, abandon vehicles, exhaust drivers, yet succeed through sheer volume. You've industrialized warfare beyond our comprehension." The psychological toll on German forces was immense, as the constant rumble of American trucks throughout the night symbolized an endless flow of supplies, a stark contrast to their own dwindling resources. The sound alone conveyed the Allies' overwhelming logistical superiority. The American logistical juggernaut left the German military in awe. The ubiquitous GMCCCKW 2.5-ton truck, the backbone of the Red Ball Express, exemplified the pinnacle of mass production. General Motors had manufactured over 500,000 of these vehicles by the war's conclusion, outnumbering the entire German military's truck fleet. These trucks boasted cutting-edge features the Germans had yet to implement, such as standard all-wheel drive, automatic tire inflation systems, waterproofing for deep fording, and reliable winter heating. Even more astonishing was the American maintenance philosophy, which prioritized rapid replacement over meticulous rebuilding. While the Germans rationed parts, the Americans discarded entire vehicles for minor issues, maintaining an uninterrupted flow of supplies. As the war progressed, the German forces boasted a cadre of seasoned mechanics, while the American troops commanded a vast pool of capable technicians who could handle up to 80% of necessary repairs. Remarkably, as the front line advanced eastward, the Red Ball Express demonstrated a nimbleness that astounded the German logistical planners, who were accustomed to weeks of preparation for major supply chain adjustments. When the original route to Chartres proved insufficient, the Americans swiftly established new Red Ball Express extensions, seemingly overnight. Alongside this, they orchestrated the White Ball Express from Rouen to Paris, the Green Diamond from Cherbourg to railroad transfer points, the Red Lion from Bayeux to Brussels, and the ABC route from Antwerp to Brussels and Charleroi. Each of these new logistical corridors became operational within a mere 48 hours of conception, a feat that left the German staff officers, who required weeks to plan similar maneuvers, thoroughly impressed by the American ability to simply paint new markers, assign trucks, and set the wheels in motion. The prevalence of black American drivers in the Red Ball Express operations generated cognitive dissonance among Nazi racial theorists. Nazi ideology proclaimed the inferiority of blacks, denying their capacity for technical tasks and initiative. Yet, these drivers accomplished logistical feats that German forces could not replicate. The African American soldiers recognized the irony, aware of the Nazis' perceptions, which only fueled their determination. Every mile they traversed refuted Hitler's beliefs. They battled racism with the tools of their trade, overcoming Nazi ideology through exceptional performance. Some German prisoners conscripted as laborers to load the Red Ball trucks found their worldviews shattered upon witnessing African American sergeants calculate weight distributions more efficiently than German engineers fluent in English. The German captors, contrary to the racial prejudices propagated by Nazi propaganda, surprisingly demonstrated fair treatment towards their prisoners. The Red Ball Express, a logistical marvel, defied the German military's expectations by overcoming seemingly insurmountable challenges. Engineers swiftly constructed or reinforced 40 bridges, established 15 major fuel depots and 26 maintenance stations, and built 8 temporary cities to accommodate the drivers, all while the operation was ongoing. The strategic destruction of the Monty Bridge by German forces, intended to disrupt American supply lines, was thwarted by the American engineers' remarkable feat. They constructed a temporary bridge in just 14 hours, allowing the Red Ball convoys to detour only 8 miles on hastily created bypass roads, much to the astonishment of the observing German engineers. The Red Ball Express, a logistical marvel, astounded German forces with its rapid construction and unwavering supply. Without lengthy planning sessions or intricate designs, the Americans built infrastructure that materialized almost overnight across French landscapes. One particular achievement left German artillery officers in awe: ammunition delivery rates that surpassed their highest theoretical projections. American artillery units enjoyed the luxury of unrestricted firing, a privilege no German counterpart had experienced since 1942. During the September 1944 reduction of Metz's fortifications, the XDX Corps artillery unleashed an astonishing 100,000 rounds in just 24 hours. The Red Ball Express ensured every single round was delivered, plus a 20% surplus. In contrast, the German artillery defending Metz was rationed to a meager 50 rounds per gun per day. This staggering disparity allowed the American guns to maintain continuous, uninterrupted fire. The Red Ball Express operated at a relentless pace, consuming vehicles at a rate that would have crippled any other military operation. German artillery officers estimated that the bombardments required 50 truckloads of ammunition per hour, and the Red Ball met this demand without interruption. By late September, the mechanical strain had reached staggering proportions, with average vehicle life plummeting from the normal 30,000 miles to just 10,000 miles. Daily, 30% of the vehicles required replacement, with 500 engines and 10,000 tires being swapped out weekly. Over 5,000 trucks were destroyed or abandoned, yet the operation never faltered. American production had anticipated these losses, and new vehicles arrived at French ports weekly, with replacement drivers trained in just 2 days and immediately deployed to the convoys. The German calculations had underestimated the sheer scale and resilience of the Red Ball Express. The American forces demonstrated an astonishing capability, destroying more enemy trucks weekly than the Germans had in their possession across France. Remarkably, their transportation capacity continued to grow rather than diminish. They had accomplished what the Germans deemed unfeasible, logistics outpacing consumption. The French civilians residing along the Red Ball route witnessed a level of American abundance that starkly contradicted the scarcity imposed by the years of German occupation. The psychological impact on the occupied populations was immediate and profound. The Red Ball Express drivers, particularly African American personnel, frequently shared their rations with French civilians, despite regulations. At every stop, children would gather, and the drivers would distribute chocolate, cigarettes, and soap. The contrast with the German occupation was stark, as the Americans casually gave away what the Germans had strictly rationed. German intelligence reported the significant propaganda impact, as the French civilians now viewed the Americans in a markedly different light. The American triumph was deemed unavoidable by many. The escalating resistance activities along the Red Bull routes served as evidence. The populace that had initially accepted our occupation now actively opposed it. In early September 1944, the Red Ball Express faced its greatest test. Patton's Third Army had advanced so far that the Red Ball struggled to maintain supply rates. The round trip now exceeded 700 miles. Exhausted drivers and disintegrating vehicles took a toll, with German intelligence detecting the strain. On September 8, General Hassan von Mantoul reported that the American supply lines exhibited signs of collapse. Convoy intervals had increased from 5 to 15 minutes, and vehicle speeds had decreased. This, he believed, presented an opportunity. The American forces demonstrated remarkable adaptability, confounding the German expectations. Within a mere 72 hours, the Red Ball Express underwent a swift reorganization, establishing intermediate transfer points and reducing individual delivery routes to 350 miles. They also implemented driver rotation systems and set up forward maintenance bases, effectively doubling the number of assigned vehicles. By September 12, the tonnage delivery had actually increased, proving that the crisis only served to strengthen the system. Complementing the Red Ball Express, the Americans devised another logistic solution that the Germans had deemed unfeasible: large-scale aerial supply. C-47 transport aircraft began delivering critical supplies directly to forward units, each carrying a payload of 3 tons. On September 16, 1944, German observers counted an astounding 900 transport flights in a single day, delivering a total of 2,700 tons by air. The Luftwaffe had once managed a remarkable daily airlift of 300 tons to Stalingrad, which they had considered the pinnacle of their logistical prowess. In contrast, the Americans employed transport aircraft with the same ease as ground vehicles, unconstrained by fighter escort concerns or fuel limitations. They simply assumed losses and overwhelmed the enemy with sheer numbers, rendering the Wehrmacht's efforts hopelessly outmatched by this industrial-scale approach. The Red Ball Express operated under command principles that defied the German military hierarchy, with junior officers making decisions typically reserved for their generals. Sergeants commanded operations larger than what German colonels would manage, a decentralization that baffled the German observers. American logistics seemed to function without any apparent central control, with every lieutenant acting like a general and every sergeant like a colonel. This chaotic structure should have resulted in inefficiency, yet they achieved remarkable efficiency instead. The Wehrmacht's rigid structure proved inadequate in the face of the advancing Allied forces. By October 1944, the growing number of rail hubs began to diminish the reliance on the Red Ball Express. Initially envisioned as a 10-day operation, the supply chain initiative persisted for 82 days, delivering an astounding 412,000 tons of cargo over a staggering 122 million ton-miles. German commanders, now defending their own territories, reflected on the lessons learned. Field Marshal Model's final report lamented, "It was not American tanks or planes that defeated us, but rather their trucks." The Red Bull Express demonstrated that in modern warfare, logistics is the very foundation of strategy. The transition to rail transport was itself a remarkable feat, as American railroad engineers reconstructed over 1,000 meters of destroyed French infrastructure. The Allied forces displayed remarkable ingenuity and resourcefulness in their logistical operations during the Red Ball Express. Despite the Germans' relentless efforts to destroy the rail infrastructure, the Allies swiftly laid new tracks, often utilizing captured German equipment, outpacing the enemy's destruction. The final statistics of the Red Ball Express defied every German calculation of logistical feasibility. Over an 82-day period, the operation delivered an astounding 412,193 tons of supplies, covering 222 million ton-miles. The fleet of vehicles averaged 5,958, peaking at 7,000, with a total of 23,000 drivers employed. Consuming 700,000 gallons of fuel daily, the Red Ball Express transported 40,000 tons of ammunition to General Patton alone and moved 15 million rations and 135,000 tons of medical supplies. Reflecting on these remarkable achievements, German officers in captivity admitted that they had based their logistical estimates on European precedents, multiplying their best performance by 3, only to be utterly surpassed by the American logistical prowess. The Red Ball Express's impact extended far beyond its sheer scale and reach. It shattered the German military's confidence in their own supremacy. Vaunted Wehrmacht commanders who had dismissed American forces as soft and overly reliant on machinery witnessed these same troops achieve logistical feats through unwavering determination and industrial might. Captured German soldiers, silently observing the endless procession of red trucks, were reduced to tears as they grasped the implications. Not merely that the Allies could sustain their armies, but that they could squander more resources than the Germans could muster. The Red Ball Express systematically dismantled the German worldview, one vehicle at a time. This achievement went beyond mere logistics, forcing an unexpected racial reckoning. The American military's internal reckoning was a pivotal moment. The triumph of the 29-52 operation hinged significantly on African American soldiers, who faced persistent segregation, unequal treatment, and exclusion from combat roles. In September 1944, General Eisenhower, witnessing the Red Ball 30.05 operations firsthand, was confronted with this contradiction. As recorded by his aide, Captain Harry Butcher, the general observed the colored drivers, who had been working tirelessly for 30 to 18 hours, and remarked, "These men are winning the war as surely as any infantry. We need to reconsider many things." This success fueled the push for 30 to 29 integration, which ultimately led to military desegregation 3 years later. The African American soldiers had proven in 30 to 36 France what they had long known: given the proper tools and opportunities, they could match the performance of any other troops. The Red Ball Express was their battlefield triumph, unfolding in just 30 hours and 44 minutes, and they emerged victorious. German racial theorists grappled to reconcile this contradiction. SS racial science publications eventually ceased mentioning American logistics operations altogether. The evidence was simply too overwhelming to deny, too damaging to acknowledge. After the war, German military engineers conducted intensive studies of the Red Ball Express operations. The lessons gleaned revolutionized logistics thinking worldwide. Quantity overcomes inefficiency. Mechanical redundancy eliminates vulnerability. Decentralized execution enables speed. Standardization multiplies capability. Human endurance has limits, but they are higher than previously assumed. In 1950, General Franz Halder, the former chief of the German General Staff, wrote, "The Red Ball Express proved that logistics determines strategy, not the other way around." The Americans understood this. "We learned it." The Red Bull drivers, a corps of 23,000 strong, demonstrated remarkable acts of bravery that left the German military perplexed. Verified accounts from official records chronicled their heroic deeds. Corporal John L. Houston, for instance, drove nonstop for 48 hours, delivering ammunition to the 2nd Armored Division at Cambrai, even falling asleep at the wheel 3 times before being revived by fellow drivers to continue his mission. Similarly, Private Booker T. Washington's truck caught fire from overheated brakes while transporting medical supplies. Defying protocol, he drove the burning vehicle 2 miles to a field hospital, jumping out just as the flames reached the cab. The supplies he delivered saved wounded soldiers from both sides. These acts of valor were multiplied thousands of times over among the Red Bull drivers. The American military's culture of individual initiative, Calculated risk-taking and mission accomplishment over regulatory compliance was vividly demonstrated to observing German forces during the Red Ball Express operations of 1944. Desperate to emulate this success, the Germans launched their own version, dubbed Operation Greif, during the Battle of the Bulge. The plan involved capturing American trucks to establish German supply lines. However, the effort quickly faltered. German drivers struggled to maintain the American vehicles' high speeds. Mechanics could not repair the equipment fast enough, and fuel supplies proved insufficient to sustain the consumption rates. Most crucially, the Germans failed to replicate the American mindset of unlimited resources. As the operations commander, Obstony, reported, "We captured 50 American trucks, but within a week, 30 were out of service. The Americans would have kept them all running." The Red Ball Express faced its ultimate challenge during the harsh winter of 1944–45. Freezing rain, snow, and ice should have halted wheeled transport, as German doctrine stated such conditions rendered logistics impossible below -10°C. Yet, the American drivers persevered. They wrapped chains on tires, poured alcohol in radiators, and pressed on. Speeds dropped from 35 to 15 miles per hour, but the tonnage deliveries continued. German observers were astonished to witness ice-covered convoys navigating through blizzards that had stopped panzer divisions. The Americans had engineered a logistics system resilient to weather, terrain, and enemy interference, though it may have lacked the elegance and efficiency of German methods. The Red Ball Express, a marvel of American logistical prowess, left an indelible mark on the German military psyche. In May 1945, captured German logistics officers were compelled to study its operations, their conclusions unanimous and devastating to German pride. General Friedrich Schultz of the German infantry succinctly observed, "The Red Ball Express represents a form of warfare we never envisioned. Americans constructed a temporary civilization, thousands of men and vehicles, millions of tons of supplies, all existing solely to nourish their armies, then dissolving when no longer required. We labored for years to build permanent infrastructure, yet they created superior temporary systems in a matter of days." The most insightful analysis came from General Heinz Guderian, the father of German armored warfare. "We invented blitzkrieg," he acknowledged, "but never solved its fundamental limitations. The United States overcame the challenges of supply and logistics through its unparalleled industrial capacity, which was once deemed unfeasible. The Red Ball Express was not merely a supply line, but a veritable torrent of material that overwhelmed our forces. This operation cost the United States approximately $100 million in 1944, encompassing the destruction of vehicles, fuel consumption, road damage, and French compensation claims. German staff officers, accustomed to managing scarcity, found this figure incomprehensible, yet Americans viewed it as a worthwhile investment. The Red Ball Express facilitated the capture of 400,000 German soldiers, the liberation of France, Belgium, and Luxembourg, and is estimated to have shortened the war by 6 months. Given that each day of war cost America $250 million, the Red Ball Express proved to be a prudent and cost-effective endeavor. The European theater witnessed a remarkable logistical feat during the 36–12 conflict. Lieutenant General John C. H. Lee, the commanding officer overseeing logistics, remarked, "We expended 5,000 trucks and 23,000 men to vanquish the German army in France. In any previous war, such losses would have been catastrophic. Yet, in the context of American industrial warfare, it amounted to acceptable overhead." An unexpected consequence of the Red Ball Express was its revolutionary impact on post-war civilian logistics. Thousands of drivers, having gained experience in operating the world's largest transportation network, returned to America. These veterans subsequently founded trucking companies, designed interstate highways, and laid the foundations for the modern American logistics industry. Enterprises such as Yellow Freight, Roadway, and Consolidated Freightways were established by Red Ball veterans who applied their military logistics expertise to civilian endeavors. The Red Ball Express, a logistical triumph. The Allied forces in Europe had learned valuable lessons during their campaign in France. They recognized that volume trumped efficiency, and that speed was more crucial than perfection. By keeping their trucks rolling around the clock, they could mobilize the world. Military historians unanimously agree that the Red Ball Express was the defining logistical operation of the European theater. Without it, Patton's advance would have stalled, Paris would have fallen weeks later, and the German forces would have successfully established their winter defensive lines. This operation validated the American military doctrine that prioritized logistics over tactics. While German officers studied the theories of Clausewitz and battlefield maneuver, the Americans focused on the assembly lines of Detroit and railroad timetables. The Red Ball Express demonstrated that in modern warfare, the ability to supply one's forces was a greater determinant of victory than tactical brilliance. On September 1, the Red Ball Express commenced its critical mission. On August 15, 1944, Field Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt, the supreme German commander in the West, received comprehensive intelligence on the Red Ball Express. After meticulously analyzing the reports for hours, he summoned his staff. "Gentlemen," he announced, "we face a challenge beyond mere military solutions. The Americans have created a supply system that renders distance irrelevant. Their strategy had assumed a culminating point where advancing forces would outrun their supplies, but that point never materialized. They have revolutionized warfare, and we are fighting the last war," he declared. His operations officer, Oberstleutnant Hans Speidel, suggested interdicting the Red Ball routes with the remaining Luftwaffe. Rundstedt's response revealed his complete understanding of the situation. "With what shall we interdict?" he asked. "They have 6,000 trucks. If we destroy 1,000, which we might, the other 5,000 will still get through." The American logistical prowess during the war was truly astonishing. Despite the staggering scale of their operations, they managed to maintain an unrelenting pace that left the Germans in awe. Behind the raw numbers were tales of human resilience that revealed the indomitable spirit of the American forces. Drivers who pushed themselves to the brink, mechanics braving the elements to keep the convoys moving, and teenagers eager to contribute. These stories wove a narrative that demoralized the German adversaries. The Americans were not the soft targets of propaganda, but rather individuals who drove themselves harder than the Germans could ever demand, driven by an unwavering sense of purpose rather than fear. This unyielding determination was the foundation of their success. The Red Ball Express, a critical logistical operation, unwittingly became a potent psychological weapon against the German forces. The endless rumble of uninterrupted motor convoys, audible even at night, instilled a sense of dread among the enemy troops. This sonic barrage proved more impactful than any planned psychological warfare tactic. German units reported hearing ghostly convoys that sapped their morale as effectively as the actual supply lines. The realization that American forces had an inexhaustible flow of resources, while the Germans rationed their last rounds, bred a sense of hopelessness that undermined their combat effectiveness. Recognizing this impact, U.S. psychological warfare units began broadcasting recorded truck engine sounds towards German positions, even when no real convoys were present. These phantom logistics proved just as demoralizing, as the enemy reported the apparitions as genuine, further demonstrating the psychological power of the Red Ball Express. In the waning days of 1944, the Red Ball Express, a colossal logistical undertaking, was officially brought to a close. This revolutionary supply chain had forever transformed military logistics, establishing the American doctrine of continuous, high-volume, and pragmatic provisioning. The sheer scale of the operation, 23,000 men, 6,000 vehicles, and countless installations, was matched only by the speed of its dissolution, which unfolded in a mere 72 hours. Troops were reassigned, vehicles redistributed, and routes returned to civilian use, a stark contrast to the months and years required by the Germans to create and dismantle their own, smaller-scale operations. This American approach of building, utilizing, and discarding as needed, before constructing something better, was not lost on the German generals who surrendered in May 1945, many of whom specifically cited the Red Ball Express as a testament to the might of the American military machine. The futility of prolonged opposition was palpably evident. As General Derpantz's soldier Hasse von Manteuil confessed during his interrogation, "Once we grasped the full extent of your logistical capabilities, we knew the war was unwinnable. Your ability to supply armies outpaced our capacity to destroy them. The Red Ball Express was a weapon we had no means to counter." Field Marshal Albert Kessler, one of Germany's most accomplished commanders, when queried about what most astonished him about American forces, did not cite their tanks or aircraft, but rather their trucks. The Red Ball Express demonstrated that the United States had mobilized its entire industrial base for the war effort. They were not merely battling your soldiers, but your factories as well. The final statistics of the Red Ball Express stand as a testament to this industrial might. The American industrial war machine left an indelible mark on the course of history. A staggering 412,193 tons of cargo were delivered over a distance of 122 million ton-miles, facilitated by a fleet of 5,958 trucks and a workforce of 23,000 drivers. This logistical feat consumed 57 million gallons of fuel and resulted in the loss of 180,000 tires and 5,000 vehicles, at a cost of $100 million. This supply advantage proved instrumental in the defeat of 47 German divisions, effectively shortening the war by an estimated 180 days. These remarkable statistics transcended mere military operations, signaling a profound shift in the nature of warfare, where industrial capacity eclipsed tactical brilliance and logistics dictated strategy. In 1994, on the 50th anniversary of D-Day, the United States Postal Service issued a commemorative stamp to honor this transformative moment in history. The National Postal Museum in Washington, D.C. recently unveiled a commemorative stamp honoring the Red Ball Express. 43-51. This ceremony acknowledged the pivotal role played by this logistical operation, which had been overshadowed by combat actions but proved equally crucial to the Allies' triumph. Veterans in attendance expressed pride in an endeavor that showcased American industrial prowess and individual determination overcoming any obstacle. 44.03 They had driven through exhaustion, mechanical issues, and adverse weather that halted armored forces. 44.09 These were predominantly African American soldiers, segregated and marginalized during the war, yet they had delivered victory at a blistering 35 miles per hour pace. 44-20 The Red Ball Express proved that in modern warfare, logistics is not merely support, it is the primary effort. This operation demonstrated that the American war machine's logistical prowess overwhelmed the German forces, shattering their preconceptions. While the German generals had scoffed at the Americans' logistical capabilities, they were silenced by the sheer scale of the Allied operation. Over 6,000 trucks delivered an astounding 12,500 tons of supplies daily across 700 miles of liberated French territory. The Germans had assumed the Americans would follow the cautious European precedent, but instead, they encountered a logistics tsunami that submerged the German forces in Allied abundance. This triumph did not stem from military brilliance, but rather from quintessential American traits that the Germans had failed to comprehend: industrial excess, mechanical aptitude, improvisational skill, and the initiative of individual soldiers who made independent decisions that would have required field marshal approval in the German military. As General George S. Patton recounted in his memoirs, the American logistical prowess had confounded the German command. The Red Ball Express, a critical logistical operation during the war, was largely carried out by African American truck drivers who played a pivotal role in the defeat of Germany. These unsung heroes, facing exhaustion, mechanical issues, and harsh weather conditions, ensured the Third Army's mobility, without which victory would have been impossible. Despite the segregation and discrimination they endured, their contributions were as vital as any combat units, and history must acknowledge this truth as the ultimate testament to the Red Ball Express. Comprising 23,000 mostly African American drivers operating 6,000 trucks on a one-way highway to victory, the Red Ball Express achieved what German forces could not overcome. The German High Command had scoffed at American logistical capabilities, dismissing them as inefficient, disorganized, and unsustainable. Yet, a mere 82 days later, those same generals found themselves surrendering to armies supplied by the legendary Red Ball Express, finally grasping the reality that American trucks had triumphed over German tanks, that industrial might had outmatched military prowess, and that logistics had become the very essence of strategy. The Red Ball Express concluded its operations on November 16, 1944, but its legacy would reverberate through the annals of military history, demonstrating that in the industrial era, victory was no longer determined solely by tactical brilliance, but by the ability to rapidly mobilize and sustain vast resources. The triumphs of warfare often lie not with the most courageous troops or the shrewdest commanders, but with the nation that can swiftly and efficiently transport the greatest quantity of resources to the most distant fronts. In August 1944, German generals scoffed at the logistical capabilities of their American counterparts, only to find themselves signing surrender documents the following May, vanquished by the efforts of 23,000 truck drivers who revolutionized the conduct of modern warfare at a mere 35 miles per hour. Their story deserves a place among the seminal military operations of history, not for its elegance or efficiency, but for its sheer effectiveness. The Red Ball Express maintained an uninterrupted flow of supplies, kept the German forces in retreat, and demonstrated that in the context of contemporary conflict, the convoy of trucks holds greater sway than the column of tanks. The highways of France still bear the indelible marks of this triumph of logistics over raw martial prowess. The scars etched into the landscape, a testament to the relentless march of overloaded trucks, bridges hastily mended, and roadsides strewn with discarded vehicles. Yet, the true monument to this operation lies in the swiftness of the Allied triumph. Each day the war was shortened saved countless lives, and the Red Ball Express played a pivotal role in this acceleration, shaving months off the conflict. In the end, the German generals who had scoffed at American logistics learned a harsh lesson in the realities of modern warfare. While amateurs may discuss tactics, professionals understand the importance of logistics, and the Americans proved their mastery in the language of trucks. The Red Ball Express was America's resounding declaration, echoing through the ceaseless roar of 6,000 engines, carrying the dual forces of democracy and destruction at a steady 35 miles per hour down a one-way road to victory. The final word belongs to the triumph of this logistical marvel. The German officer, whose identity has faded into obscurity, uttered a poignant observation that was later recounted by a Red Bull driver at the 1994 commemoration. As he stood on a Belgian roadside, witnessing the endless procession of American vehicles, the officer, with a distinct accent, addressed his captives, "We prepared for everything. Your tanks, your planes, your ships. Yet, we never anticipated your trucks. How can one defeat an enemy who possesses more trucks than you have soldiers?" The answer rolled past him in a steady stream, driven by weary Americans who were rewriting the very principles of warfare, one delivery at a time. The Red Ball Express had transformed logistics into strategy, supply into triumph, and trucks into the most formidable. The Allied forces' innovative tank technology proved a game-changer in the European conflict. Initially, German commanders dismissed the threat, but soon recognized the tank's devastating potential as Patton's forces, bolstered by an unprecedented logistical feat, approached their strongholds.